right, let's review AEW Grand Slam 2026 that took place on February 14, 2026 at the Kudos Bank Arena there in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Kudos. I'm assuming that's how you spell it. That's how you pronounce it, right? Because the spelling is Kudos. Like there's a vowel missing there. There's just a vowel missing for that. But one would assume that that's how you pronounce it. Kudos. That doesn't sound right. But then again, Australia is a silly place. They name towns stuff like Dubbo and Spanker's Knot. Another classic, Wagga Wagga, right? Like these are, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna chalk it up to this being cultural and just move on here from how to pronounce kudos. I'm pretty sure I have it right. It's just, it is what it is. Listen, the show in about itself, wasn't this a great little pro wrestling show? Wasn't this just fantastic to sit down and watch and enjoy? I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Just a great show from top to bottom, just packed with everything that makes AEW really, really connect and click these days. On the weekly AEW Dynamite reviews for the past, easily month and a half, I've been talking about how excellent AEW has been, like nonstop, just week after week, really just like top tier wrestling television, time after time after time, just focusing on everything that they do best, creating some stories and some angles that are just fantastic, that are compelling, plus using their top stars and making the top of the card feel exciting, and then it trickles down everywhere else. Then that kind of thing sort of gets everyone excited and involved into it. And here we go again, another great television offering from AEW. Just a complete and utter roll. There's nothing else that compares on a weekly basis to the consistency and quality of professional wrestling that we have in America, or even that we have in North America, or I would even argue elsewhere, as AEW has been. It's been so consistently good, easy to watch shows. You're looking at your clock and you're like, holy smokes, okay, like there's 90 minutes that have already scooted by. It's just fantastic. It's a fantastic string of success for All Elite Wrestling these days, and they continued with the Australia show with a really hot crowd of 7,029 people in attendance according to WrestleTix. So there's an appetite for AEW, and as they continue to do top shelf stuff like this, I think just naturally the buzz is going to generate itself. People are going to get excited, and more people are going to watch. More and more people are going to buy tickets. And speaking about more and more people watching, this took place on Valentine's Day. So that's going to be a challenge. A Valentine's Day on a Saturday night, is just complete death, I would assume, for television ratings. You're likely going out on a date on a Saturday night. What are you talking about? When Valentine's Day lands on a Tuesday, maybe some people will go out, but there'll be a lot of people who be like, honey, let's go. I have nice reservations for us on Friday or Saturday. We'll celebrate it properly, because tomorrow's a school day or a work day, and we can't go out and hang out, and we're on a schedule and we can't come back and fool around all that much, So, there's a lot of reasons as to why this why a Saturday, St. Valentine's Day, is just going to be super duper rotten for the company. And I mean, look, this was exciting. This was good. This was a very, very good, very, very good special branded show that AEW put on. And look, I don't necessarily want to do comparisons here, but here we go. I'm going to do, here's the first comparison. Remember Battle of the Belts? Remember when Tony Khan decided, or announced, I should say, that there would be quarterly, special branded shows called Battle of the Belts, and everyone was getting big Clash of Champions vibes, and we were all excited for that, because the idea of having these quarterly, big time, near pay-per-view quality matches or shows with, all the titles on the line and whatnot, that was a really interesting prospect. And Battle of the Belts just end up being like complete and utter fillers, things that, I don't even recall a good Battle of the Belts, one where from top to bottom I'm like, oh yeah, this was all, no, it was all just filler. It was all just, nonsense. So I look at this show and I'm thinking to myself, this is probably what Tony Khan had in mind, was cooking up in his brain when he was thinking about the Battle of the Belts. And instead of doing it for the Battle of the Belts, where we're doing it for the Grand Slam show, the Grand Slam Mexico show that we did last year was along the same lines, which is very, very exciting. But on this show specifically, the titles were defended everywhere. We even had a number one contendership match here. Like, everything was excellent, and really did show that the Battle of the Belts concept was always poorly executed when you look at this in retrospect. And then, of course, well, if you want to do a comparison to what WWE does with the Saturday night's main event stuff, I mean, which is highly touted as this uber super duper special, and how WWE promotes those shows as being extra special. And they all, when you look at that, and despite the promotion, and WWE promotes them as, extra special, and then they air, the shows actually happen, and people, including their fans, sort of go, that this again was a whole lot of nothing, and it was a whole lot of nothing to the point that NBC took the show off of the Saturday nights to just stuff it down on Peacock. Don't ever think that was not a cancellation / demotion, because it was. This was not. I am convinced. Look, don't go down the path thinking that, WWE was okay with this transfer. No. They want it to be on network television. They are probably not super content with Saturday night's main event being relegated to the Peacock. Anyway, with the Saturday night main event show falling flat and the audience not feeling well served, essentially, a special show like Grand Slam just runs laps around it. Like, it just completely obliterated, the competition, like event for event, if you want to do that comparison. They're on two completely different planets, two utterly, completely different planes of existence even. This was such a fun show. And it seems like it was overall a very good success for AEW. They even did the house show the next day. I'm recording this on Sunday, so I've already seen a few clips of the house show event where, you can tell like the wrestlers are taking it more easy. They're having a little more fun since it's not on television. A little exchange between Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy where Mox is doing the shin kicks and putting his hands in his pockets and all that stuff. Everyone's just more relaxed, having a good time. Yes, I did hear that the Inspiration have been signed. I have thoughts about that I will probably share on stream. This is not the moment to talk about that because there's so much good stuff that we should be covering on this show that we should focus on that instead of the Inspiration getting signed. So why don't we go right to it? Let's start this review talking about the first match, the opening match, Jon Moxley and Konosuke Takeshita going to a time limit draw for the AEW Continental Championship. I thought this match rocked. I thought this was a fantastic match where starts off at a measured pace, I guess. People just having a good even Steven start between the two. Mox is going for some grappling early on. And then we move on to some really physical stuff, things that you would be expecting from these two gentlemen to start landing on each other. We get into some really good strike exchanges on top of that. They fight on the floor. Moxley lands a pile driver when they get back into the ring. We get some big power bombs by Konosuke Takeshita as well. Konosuke Takeshita with some exploder suplexes, following up with a running knee, which was a really fun combination. And then they're basically countering out of each other's moves, start landing some headbutts, and Mox opens himself up hard way on that one, I can only imagine. And then we saw him a little later on in the evening, and he's got he had a bit of a mouse right under his eye. And we're getting the countdown as of 5 minutes. We start getting the countdown, and things start to feel a little more urgent. And the guys really followed the vibe of the match tremendously of the countdown. And when we hit the 30-second mark, crowd is up on their feet. They're cheering. They really want a winner here. They're looking for someone to get the big one, to get the big win. And we get some big strikes. We're getting some pinfalls with some kickouts at one, but time expires. They just can't do it. We hit the time limit. Moxley retains, of course, and this was a 4-star match. And I've seen a lot of people say that they were very disappointed in this match because they figured that it would probably go harder. My counter argument to that is it probably could go harder, and it probably will go harder at AEW Revolution, because I think we are angling for a rematch. I think that, especially with the post-match angle that they had, very brief, where Mox seems to be negotiating with the ref, and the ref goes, "No, there's nothing I can do." Mox and Takeshita go nose to nose again, and Mox shoves him, but then Takeshita belts him and then hits the Raging Fire and gets the crowd all fired up as well. He's upset. Mox is upset. Everyone is upset. I think we're getting the rematch at Revolution. This is something that we've seen Tony Khan do in the past, where you'll have the one match occur, which will be a very good match, but again, you're kind of left a little bit on your you're left a little bit on your appetite, where it's like, I probably could have gone a little harder, and the next thing you know, he books it for the pay-per-view. So I think the guys were saving themselves for that big match, and this type of situation here just adds a little more heat, adds a little more expectation. I think I like this kind of booking. I think it's good. You get round one, and still telling the story that Jon Moxley can't beat this kid, right? And then we'll be going into Revolution with that in the back of the mind, right? With Jon Moxley's like, look, I cannot put this guy away. And I still think the more interesting thing to do with Jon in this circumstance would be to have Takeshita win the Continental title, then go back to having issues with Kazuchika Okada, and then he and Okada eventually meet, perhaps even at All In. One with the international international title, and the other one with the Continental Crown, and then they both come together, and we get the Undisputed Championship again, which Konosuke Takeshita finally wins by beating Okada, his rival, right? Essentially, I'd be very okay with that, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to go down that run. Now that would mean Jon Moxley having a title reign that didn't have any successful defenses, which would be strange. It would be a little odd, but it wouldn't bother me all that much. It's Jon Moxley. It's like, it would be absolutely fine. Then we had the Babes of Wrath successfully retain the AEW Women's World Tag Team Championship by defeating Megabad. So yeah, I mean, look, this was Harley Cameron's big homecoming as well. Lots of the Australian members of the AEW roster were appearing on this show, and I thought this was a good match. I see a lot of. I have a feeling. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I think that in a lot of my circles and the people I hang around with, and I look on Cage Match as well, I feel like everyone has an instant bias when it comes to Harley Cameron. Now, I'm not going to pretend that Harley Cameron is the next Akira Hokuto. I think she's a below average pro wrestler, but I also think that she has improved. I mean, the company she keeps right now in with her tag team in in AEW cannot but not make you get better in this circumstance. I think she's had terrible matches in the past, but over the past couple of defenses that the Babes of Wrath have had, I haven't seen her be completely detrimental or just drag the match down. Yes, she's still really fucking green, and I don't think she's that great a pro wrestler. I think, like I said, I think she's below average, but she's been carrying her weight, and I think the Ricky Morton role for her suits her really, really well. But you can also feel clearly that there's a lot of stuff that gets set up in the match that is done to work around Harley's limitations, as opposed to someone like Willow Nightingale or Megan Bayne, who are well-rounded, good to great pro wrestlers. They just do the typical thing here. So the point that I'm making is that I think that by default, there's a lot of people who critique matches and look at matches who see a Harley Cameron match and already have their arms crossed and go, this is not Harley Cameron, she stinks. I think that's how it goes. But as for me, I see her being used to the best of her strengths, and like I said, I don't think she was detrimental here. I don't necessarily think she was particularly outstanding. She did very good Harley Cameron stuff, and she's a great seller. Like I said, I think the Ricky Morton role suits her fine. The beating that she took from Bayne and Ford was fantastic. I even thought Penelope Ford was good in this match. So I have a feeling like a lot of people are extremely unfair or come in ready to harshly judge Babes of Wrath matches for multiple reasons. And the main significant reason being, Harley Cameron and her abilities, right? But I don't know. I don't hate this. I didn't hate this match at all, in fact, I thought it was quite good. I went and gave this a 3.5, and I think part of it why I was so jazzed up about it is because the crowd was super into it. This was a very hot crowd, but they were clearly behind Harley here, and it was good. It was just a good, clean pro wrestling match. And of course, the highlights always happen when Megan is in there, when Willow is in there. I mean, these are high level. These are high level upper crust pro wrestlers of the women's division. So of course, whenever they get involved, whenever they start doing things, you can see more easily. You can see the polish. You can see the experience that comes into play. Look, I mean, Harley Cameron hit a Canadian destroyer, right? I mean, when I tell, just like Ricky Morton. Remember a couple of years ago when old ass Ricky Morton pulled a Canadian destroyer in the middle of the ring, and I think that thing was clipped and passed around tons of times. I'm telling you guys, she's perfect for the Ricky Morton role. Now, just to be very clear, I am not saying that Ricky Morton was a below average pro wrestler. Ricky Morton was a very, very, very good pro wrestler. It's just, the role that he fulfilled in his team was, to take a convincing ass beating. And I think Harley is good at that. And then she clocks out some offense. I think the Cazadora stuff that she does is very mid. I don't think it's all that good, and she's learning on the job is what she's doing, right? I think that's the fairest criticism you can give, because I don't think she was as terrible as people like to make her. I don't think she was as terrible as the people who make her out to be like this dog shit pro wrestler was in this match. That's a sentence for you. Anyway, big power moves. The ladies are doing dives to the floor and whatnot. It's a good little match. And it ends with Cameron getting the backslide pinfall victory on Penelope Ford to a big rousing cheer from the crowd. So, as opposed to last year's Grand Slam where Harley came up short because she was challenging Mercedes Moné for the TBS title. Fast forward to now, and now she gets her win in front of her home crowd. I still think, as I mentioned when I was previewing the show, when I was previewing the show on stream earlier this week, I still think they should have dropped the titles. I still think that we need to free up Willow Nightingale to do singles wrestler things. We need to free her up to do specifically that, because I think right now there's a lot of interesting singles matches that we're not fulfilling right now. With Willow, some defenses and whatnot in favor of the tag team titles. So I think you might as well, because I was thinking Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford as tag team champions. I think that's terrific. I really think that was terrific. Clearly, we're not going in that direction, and I was kind of disappointed. In fact, listen, since we're on the topic, I was kind of surprised that no titles changed hands. You know, after a Dynamite this week, where 2 titles changed hands, you know, on a Wednesday night, I was thinking, there's a couple of possibilities here that you could absolutely look at, and for a title change. Like, I don't think, deep in my heart, I didn't think that MJF was going to lose to Brody King, but I did make a case for, maybe going with the flow and pivoting and having Brody King win the title, although it was, I was aware it was mostly a pipe dream, but I did think it was an interesting possibility to go down the folk hero route with him as a world champion. So I was a little surprised on the show that no titles changed hands. We were coming off of a Dynamite that had just like that had unexpected results, that was unpredictable. And this show felt a little more predictable. There was nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. Especially when I said in the review, when I was talking about how exciting this show felt because of the unpredictability and the surprise wins. You don't want to start doing swerves every show or every match, because then they start losing impact. And especially if you do them and they don't have any essence, they don't provide anything back to the show, and it's just for shock value. We've seen it. We saw it last year with the John Cena heel turn. If you've got nothing lined up, if there's no plan for it, it's just going to fall flat on its face. So I didn't necessarily need, the Australia show to just be chock full of surprise victories and whatnot, or be that unpredictable. Sometimes predictable can be fun in pro wrestling. Sometimes it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? But I really thought that this was a spot here, the women's tag team championship, where AEW could have decided to just switch things around, throw in a little title change here to make the show feel extra unique, and we move on. But no, look, they didn't decide to do that. What they decided to do instead was have Lena Cross show up and beat down the Babes of Wrath and align herself with the Mega Bad trio, duo, which I guess makes them a trio now, and I am all for it. Seeing those three together, right? Bane and Ford and Cross. You look at Lena Cross, and she's standing, face to face with Megan Bane, who already comes across like a powerhouse, a tower, a skyscraper amongst the women's division. Lena Cross is so much taller than her. Like, I think she's a shoot 6'4", right? If I'm not mistaken. And she's having Megan Bane, who is perceived as this juggernaut in the division, right? That just towers over everyone else. She has Megan Bane having to lift her chin to look her right in the eyes. I'm like, fuck yeah. This is a trio that I think is awesome. I think it's great. Look, Lena Cross has been on the radar of a lot of AEW fans because of her Ring of Honor work. People got really, really excited at her size. Obviously, she's got a lot of presence. She looks good, and she's another refugee from DPW as well. Look, I have some. I have some hopes. I have a certain amount of hopes for her, right? And she's wrestled a lot in Japan. She, I believe she wrestled mostly for Sendai Girls, if I'm not mistaken. And she's done some Ring of Honor work. She's wrestled for GCW as well in the US. And she's been traveling. She's well versed. She's been doing this for short of 10 years. I'm just going off the top of my head. Let's see here. Let's pull up Lena Cross here, and her debut was in 2017. So, not even a full decade in yet. She's 30 years old. Like, this is the time to do something with her, right? Like, we shouldn't pretend that she's this young up and coming rookie. She's been around the block a couple of times, and at 30 years old, well, I'm sure she's relieved at the very least that just like, okay, now I got a shot at the big time. Now I got to make this work. Finally, all the work paid off. I'm definitely not saying that, she's washed up or whatnot. I'm just saying, it's a good prospect for the future, not in the sense that, she's 22 years old and she's got all these years ahead of her. No, like we're kind of expecting her to be a developed commodity at this point, and maybe someone that can contribute something really, really entertaining, fun, and some quality in All Elite Wrestling. So, there's a fair chance that on Dynamite this week that she has her AEW proper debut, right? There's a very good chance of that. I'll be excited to look at that. I'll be ready to embrace Lena Cross if she's. I'll be ready to see it. I'm very much looking forward to see what the future holds, because this trio in and about itself right now, for me, looks absolutely fantastic. It's only ultimately the question is, is Megan Bayne the star of the show here? Like, between the three, is she the one that we are using this faction, I guess, to elevate? And I would still assume yes. AEW really, really likes Megan Bayne, and I am still very much on the train of Megan Bayne being the most improved wrestler of 2025. I think she's become much more TV polished and much tighter in her executions and whatnot all throughout 2025. I think she's grown into the role. I feel she's more confident in how she projects and who she is more than ever. I would assume that it's still the plan to push Megan Bayne moving forward, but if we get some interesting add-ons, some interesting additions like Lena Cross, in the meantime, I am not going to complain. We get a Ricochet promo, basically saying that, basically putting the pin in the Jack Perry feud, but also in a way that feels that, we're going to continue with it. And you're like, all right, then, if that's your decision, type of thing. Oh, wait, I forgot there was even before that. I forgot to mention there was a Tekla and Chris Statlander promo package, I guess, a little pre-tape. Where they aired post-match comments from this week's Dynamite, both from Tekla and Chris Statlander. Tekla just like completely unhinged with this strap, from the strap match wrapped around her neck with the title, and just essentially cutting one of these, Japanese post-match press conference promos, right? Like they do, where she just walks in, there's a camera there, and she starts just like talking and, being so hype. And, of course she's excited because she just won. And I'm like, okay, this actually rules. This rules. Tekla has been fantastic. And I can't hear anything to the contrary. She has been absolutely fantastic. And look, let's try it out. Let's try her out as world champion. We just like we did with Statlander, and see how it goes. And this is the only way we'll ever find out if Tekla was material or not, is if we actually go ahead and do it. And I have a gut feeling that the experiment with Tekla here is going to end up being more successful than the experiment that was done with Chris Statlander right up until last Wednesday. That's how I legitimately think this is going to go. And then on the flip side, you had Chris Statlander, who was like still covered in her blood, in the dark, poorly lit, and she's mad and she's upset. She's basically saying this feud must go on, right? talking about, and the promo that she cuts is very good. And like this angry, focused Statlander is maybe something that was missing in her presentation. As I'm watching it, I'm saying to myself, most of the Statlander stuff that we saw as she was world champion was, a little cutesy, a little fun, a little funny, just leaning into, since she's hanging around with Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, drinking out of that energy. When maybe, in fact, a little more grit, a little tougher Statlander maybe would have gone a long way in how she presented herself, as opposed to, like I said, just being a little more, having a little more joie de vivre in what she's doing, right? I think that would have served her well, because the promo she cut here was excellent, if you ask me. I thought it was very good. Now, of course, you've got the context. She's just out of the match. She hasn't showered. She's sweaty. She's got the blood all over her. So you're like, okay, like this fucking rules. Why didn't we get more of this Chris Statlander moving forward? And, sometimes this is what it takes too. Like Chris Statlander she's not done here. She's not suddenly squirreled away in AEW. There was people who absolutely lost it when Statlander lost the title, as if she was going to be relegated to the bottom of the card. Now this isn't WWE. It's not the way they work here. I can absolutely see another title reign for Chris Statlander. I can absolutely see that. And they did. It's not as if the booking wasn't on her side. They did good by her. Remember, she won the title at the 4-way match a few months ago, right? And then immediately after, Toni Storm comes back and is like, look, you won the title, but you didn't beat me, right? So they had the immediate rematch with Toni Storm, who was the previous champion, who hadn't lost the title officially because it was a 4-way, and Statlander won. And they clearly established that, okay, Statlander is the real deal. She didn't win this title out of by a fluke, because it was a multi-person match. She can also stand with these top women of the division. And then they had her defend against Mercedes Moné and beat Mercedes Moné. And then they had her defend against Jamie Hayter, who is a former women's world champion in and about itself. It's not as if they just had her wrestle the scrubs of the division. They were giving her the top wrestlers. They were giving her the top people of the division. And they gave her like 140 plus day reign. That's a good reign. Like, they tried with Chris Statlander. I don't think it was immensely successful as I think we actually saw reasons as to why maybe things that we still need to work on in regards to Chris Statlander and her presentation to make her feel like a big time world champion. But I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a failure. And I'm not going to say that she wasn't given all the opportunities to succeed. She was. It was a success, and she was given those opportunities. Now, it didn't set the world on fire, but I don't think anyone's going to say this was a bad reign. I don't think you can say it was a bad reign. It just wasn't as compelling as you might have thought, or that people might have thought going into this. So, I think then moving on and trying with Tekla is an excellent idea, and I'm excited to see how Tekla's reign is handled and how that goes. Then we had Hangman Adam Page defeating Andrade El Idolo to become the #1 contender for the AEW World Championship. This was very good, very, very good match. I mean, what are you gonna do? Two all-star athletes, two all-star big-time wrestlers going at each other. And I think the people saying, oh, well, there was no question that it was going to be Hangman, clearly hadn't been watching the past couple of weeks of Dynamite, because we said the exact same thing when Andrade fought Swerve. It was like, oh, there's no question it's Swerve. Boom. And then when Andrade fought Kenny, it was, oh, there's no question it's Kenny. Boom. So it was really smartly put together in that aspect. It was really, really smart the way they presented this. Whereas in the past few weeks, Andrade has been, for all intents and purposes, landing upsets over people. And now we get into this match here. where Hangman is essentially where Hangman is essentially the favorite, but you just might never know here. But it turns out it was going to be the Hangman who was going to win. I mean, then at the same time, that was really the most logical one. It was the one because look, MJF was holding on to the title. The only way this was going to go is if Andrade moved forward and then Brody King moved forward, right? And that would have been a very weird main event for Revolution between you and I. Well, you could have argued that, MJF could have regained his title, so on and so forth. Anyway, I don't want to get into that because now there's no point in doing it because now we have the reality, we have the facts. There's no point in saying what could have been at this point, So, but basically it had to be Hangman since Max was going to be the champion at Revolution. It had to be a big baby face, and we're revisiting a seminal feud in the company as well, between the protagonist and the antagonist, the true hero of the promotion against the promotion's real villain. So, of course, it all makes sense, and I'm completely okay with that. And it was a good match. Yeah, it was a very, very good match. I gave it like 3 3/4 stars match, and they're throwing each other around and being strong and physical with each other, and they even they have another plant for Andrade, who even gives him a peck on the cheek this time as he's taking a picture with her. And then the Hangman shows up and says, "I'll take a picture with you too." And then he takes a picture with the plant, and the crowd goes nuts for it. And then she says, "I'll give you a kiss." And he says, No, I'm a married man. You're like, okay, all right, there you go. That's the Hangman, right? Just like honorable and pure. And then we wonder why people have, weird expectations when it comes to this guy. Anyway, the match goes fine. I thought it was very good. We're doing springboard Spanish flies and whatnot. It's very good, very hard hitting, tremendous match. And then Don Callis distracts the ref to allow Andrade to low blow Hangman, but Hangman blocks the low blow and instead hits one of his own, which he's done in the past. He's done before, even as a babyface. He doesn't, it's like, oh, you want to do it? Fine, I'll do it to you, bonk kind of thing. Hangman won't do it without provocation. It's like, oh, this is where you want to, it's basically this is how you want to play. I can play dirty too, bonk. And even what I found interesting in the match, usually I don't have commentary on very loud, but it was, I was listening to it here. And early in the match, I think it's Tony Schiavone who's pointing out that, Hangman Adam Page is not above playing dirty to win a match because we've seen it before. And then Excalibur goes, oh, of course, seminal feud with Swerve Strickland and whatnot. And you're like, okay, yeah. So that was clearly just to remind people that Hangman is able to play dirty. He might be a honorable, sweet baby face that everyone loves, but he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. He doesn't mind drinking the blood of other humans to get his point across. 3 3/4 stars. Good match. Buckshot following the Buckshot lariat following the low blow for the win. Then we get the hair versus hair tornado tag team match where Tony Storm and Orange Cassidy defeated Marina Shafir and Wheeler Yuta. Fun match. Look, there's not really much to break down in the match. It was fun. I thought it was interesting, and it started off hot, to get the crowd into it. The baby faces attacked the Death Riders as they were doing their entrance into the arena. Doesn't Wheeler Yuta's Death Rider theme fucking rock? I think it might be my second favorite. I think it might be my favorite, right up there with Dan Garcia's. Right? I think it's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, it starts in the crowd and I'm excited because we're getting the split screen. You got stuff happening on both sides of the screen and I'm slapping my hands. I'm going, all right, let's go. This is the kind of shit that I'm into. I love this stuff. This was a lot of fun. And Tony Storm eats a big pile driver on road cases, which incapacitates her and she gets carried back by medical professionals and Luther dressed as an old-timey barbershop dude. But she comes back soon enough. Like they don't wait till the very end of the match for her to show back up. She pops back soon enough. It was just to get some heat on Utah, and they have a good little match, like a lot of fun. Just entertaining, good for what it was. I thought everyone worked hard. It like when I say a fun little match, it wasn't like just straight up comedy throughout the whole way. There was a lot of good work in this, and a lot of intergender stuff. I think this is how AEW decides to get away with doing intergender matches, is doing these occasional mixed tag team match. It's kind of like my brains, they're kind of mixed. My mixed match, god damn it, mixed tag team matches. I'm going to leave all of this in just because I have a humiliation fetish. I don't know. We're not removing that. So I think this is how they kind of get away with it and sort of scratch that itch that I know that a lot of AEW fans love. They want Tony Storm to fight men and all of that. So we kind of get some of that here, and it ends with an orange punch and a Storm Zero on Utah to secure the victory, and he gets his head shaved off. And here's what I liked here. Here's a little, and I'm sure you all enjoyed it as well. Utah's like, fuck you guys. I'm not doing this. I'm going to shave it myself. And he's hitting the bricks. He's heading over to the shower. He's like, I'm done here. But Jon Moxley shows up from the audience and he stops him. He's like, kid, you lost. You got to go suffer the consequences of what just happened. You got to man up, brother. Hit the ring and take your punishment like a man, type of thing. And Wheeler sort of protests. He goes, come on, man. And in a way where it's like, oh shit, John, I can't say no now. I can't say no to you. And Mox is like, come on, get in there. And I like that little bit of storytelling where Wheeler Yuta is still he's still a little weasel, but Mox is there to keep him honest, where it's like, look, this is a learning experience. You lost, man up. I like that. I thought that was fun. And so then they proceed to the shaving and whatnot. Of course, they sort of shave him very goofy, or they do most of the top and not the sides. And Mina Shirakawa is there, and she gets she snips off some of the hair, and Luther snips off some of the hair, and so does Orange, and so does Tony Storm. Orange actually shaves quite a bit, and Luther as well. Fun little match. A good little breather. A good little breather before we head into this next fucking match. The TNT Championship ladder match. Kyle Fletcher successfully retained the title by defeating Mark Briscoe in one of the better ladder matches that I have seen in a long time. Well, there's multiple reasons for that. The first reason was it's a one-on-one, clean as a sheet match, not with tons of people interfering and whatnot, people getting involved. And, and we're not focused on, since it's no disqualifications, we're going to use all sorts of weapons and gimmicks and tables. And no tables were pulled out. We were focused on the ladders, and the ladders were always used as weapons. It wasn't always just a question of trying to build the wackiest, setup so that people could fly off of it. No, there was a true to form grittiness in this match that made it feel brutal, that made it feel rough, and I was into it. And that's saying something from a guy who was officially burnt out on ladder matches for a long time. But I did say in the preview, we haven't had a ladder match in AEW for a while now. I wouldn't say like an eternity, but it's been a substantial amount of time between the last ladder match and this one here. Whereas there was a time where I felt like every month AEW would give us a ladder match or whatnot. And when those ladder matches would happen, they'd be multi-man matches, and then they become spot fests. And then people are just trying to outdo each other and ultimately putting themselves in positions where they're just going to get hurt, like seriously hurt. In this circumstance here, that was not the case. Well, I mean, they could have gotten seriously hurt, but the focus was on telling a wrestling match that involved ladders, and I appreciate that. The ladders were not the centerpiece of the match. The ladders were used to inflict more harm on the other guys. If you understand, I don't know if you get the nuance, because I'm sure you can think about matches where so much emphasis is put on the ladders and using ladders and throwing ladders and jumping into ladders and tossing ladders and ramming with ladders and ladders and ladders. Now it's like, okay, the ladders are just used in these very strategic spots, like to to hurt the other guy. Like Mark Briscoe being lawn darted into the ladder, right? Which caused him which was the excuse for him to blade, right? The ladder, the velocity with which Kyle Fletcher launched him into the ladder just like flew, and I thought it was going to land into the audience. That ladder fucking flew, brother. And that was a big spot early on. You know, the froggy bow onto a ladder bridge. That was pretty impressive. The J driller onto a ladder was also another ladder bridge as well. That was crazy. And we're doing power bombs onto the ladders and whatnot. But of course, the big spot that I still can't believe they did, right, is the brain buster off the top of the ladder, at the top, very high up on the ladder, right? Fletcher does a brain buster on Mark Briscoe. And it might not be the most spectacular spot you've ever seen, right? Like, and I'm talking like spectacle, the Matt Hardy swanton, you know, that kind of off the ladders, that kind of stuff. Things where you're like, that's spectacular. I've never seen anything like this, right? This move had so little margin for error. I want you to, if you haven't already, because you might have, because you're an A+ audience listening to a D-list podcast, the margin for error in this situation here, I want you to think about it for a second. I want you to think about everything that could have gone wrong. You know, they don't get the proper elevation, they don't get the proper elevation. Fletcher teeters back a little too much. Mark Briscoe doesn't tuck his chin in good and well enough. You know, there's so many things that could have just gone wrong by happenstance here, just by pure bad karma, but didn't. This thing here, this power bomb, brain buster, off the ladder is one of the most insane spots I have ever seen in a ladder match, and this one is going to stick with me. Because again, we're not trying to do something flashy. We're doing what Kyle Fletcher is trying to do is hurt Mark Briscoe in the context of the wrestling match, of course. We're talking kayfabe here. In kayfabe, he's doing everything he can to hurt him. So he's not going to do something flashy. He's not going to do something wild. He's just going to lift him up on the ladder and drop him on his fucking head. That's the plan. And I'm like, and I can get behind this, and I get it. And it's brutal, and it's awesome, and it is one of the most crazy things I have ever seen anyone do in a wrestling match. Just absolutely bonkers shit to be expected from a guy like Mark Briscoe. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, imagine how much trust he puts in Kyle and how good this fucking kid is, that this vet is like, yeah, I will put my life in your hands, Kyle, because you are a fucking pro. It's insane. It's an incredible spot. It is an incredible spot. It is one of the most fantastic things I have seen all fucking year. Now, my main problem with this match is that it didn't finish the match. Now, I'm not one of these guys, and you know by experience where I'm like, where you hear people, one of these guys who say, oh, well, the top rope, insert name here of the move, should have ended the match because sometimes I agree. Most of the time I don't, because there's a lot of times where these super powerful moves don't end a match, and there's all sorts of reasons for that, right? And sometimes you're like, well, because they went into this even better finish, and then I can excuse a lot, right? But of course, like, by pure logic, the brain buster is Fletcher's finisher. If he's doing it from an elevated position, it should not only end the match, but end Mark Briscoe. Mark Briscoe should be selling this injury for the next 3 weeks on television type of thing. That's how it, honestly, that's how it should go. But when it didn't finish, I sat back and I was rubbing my hands together. I was going, okay, what do you got in store for us then, boys? And then the match ends just after Mark Briscoe brings in a ladder, and both guys are on top of the ladders, one next to each other, and Kyle Fletcher sort of shoves him off, and I'm like, oh, that's the finish. No, that sucked. That's not a good finish. The brainbuster ultimately should have been the peak. The boys should have hit an audible there and say, yeah, no, we're finishing the match here. Whatever they had decided, whatever structure they had decided after to continue doing, they should have just gone, yeah, no, we're finishing this match. We're done here. This is good. And Mark Briscoe then sells it like death. And then you don't see him for 2 weeks on Dynamite. And when he does show back up, he's got a fucking neck brace on. Because it is an insane move. We've got we had the Will Ospreay story with the Tiger Driver 91, 92. I can't remember which iteration of the Tiger Driver. The one where, he killed Bryan Danielson with, right? So, we did that for weeks, months even, where it's like, don't do it, Will, you're going to ruin his career. This is a career ruining match, a brain buster off of 6 feet, 9 feet off the ground, whatever. That's a career ruining move right there. You know what I'm talking about? Like that, honest to God, look, this is to me a 4.25 star match. Nonetheless, even with the finish that I didn't care for. Imagine how high I would have rated this if they had ended the match at the peak. I feel disappointed in that regard because this was terrific. God damn, this was a good match. Just brutal and it felt like this Game 7. It felt like the end of the unannounced best of 7 series that these guys have had. It just felt special on this card. And it is the match of the night. And right now, look, we're in February. Okay, we're in February. And right now, Kyle Fletcher is in early contention for Wrestler of the Year, right? Or most outstanding if you go by the Observer standards, as opposed to the Lou Thez, which includes the business aspect of it, right? But early on, right now, just use your fucking brains for a second. Why am I getting angry? Why am I getting mad at you? That was just gratuitous. But if you think about it for a second, Kyle Fletcher's just came off of Wednesday, like 5 days ago, 4 or 5 days before this match here, with an incredible match with Tommaso Ciampa. And he comes into this match here with Mark Briscoe and has another just crazy balls to the wall match. So already Kyle Fletcher is taking ownership of 2026 and saying, yeah, this just might be my year. This might be mine this year. He got all sorts of accolades last year and so on and so forth. But look, listen to, he got all sorts of accolades, number 2 in the FSM 50, and just everyone seems to agree. Like even the fucking ESPN list, was it the ESPN list? Even they had to acknowledge that Kyle Fletcher was the best fucking wrestler of the year. I don't even remember. What was it? Look, it doesn't matter. He even on in lists on outlets that are usually skewed towards WWE, lists that say that Dominic Mysterio is the number 1 wrestler of the year and all this kind of bullshit, they will nonetheless have to acquiesce that Kyle Fletcher is fucking special. I can tell you right now, as of right now, I am currently juggling my number 1 spot and number 2 spot for the best 30 under 30 Voices of Wrestling list, which we're going to be getting into very, very shortly. We're going to start the voting process. We're going to start doing our little write-ups and whatnot. He's in my top 2. And he's inching higher and higher. We're getting a better case for his number 1 spot with matches like this, concurrent, like not even within a week's difference. Brother, get into it. Get into Kyle fucking Fletcher. Get a backstage segment that followed with Kazuchika Okada and Kyle Fletcher. Kazuchika Okada, we learned that he had agreed not to interfere in Fletcher's match. Fletcher was appreciative. Okada says it's It's all my pleasure. And Kyle then offers up, because the two of us together, we are Protokada. And that's not going to go over well with Konosuke Takeshita. I'm telling you, folks, we're not done with this Okada Takeshita feud, and Takeshita is going to get a big fucking win. It's going to be such a tremendous win. Well, we've already talked about that. And then to wrap it all up, MJF successfully retained the AEW World Championship by defeating Brody King, who was greeted with "fuck ice" chants from the audience when the bell rang. I watched the replay, as I mentioned earlier. I watched the replay, and none of it was censored. They were clear. They were clear as rain. It could not be any clearer, folks. Let me tell you. But they also didn't censor the "Utah's a shit cunt" chants either. So, take that for what you will. This match was a lot of fun. I thought it was very, very good. I think the overall reasoning that MJF was going to win, it was kind of unmistakable, especially after Hangman winning the number one contendership. I think that really did telegraph it. I think that kind of took away from the drama of the match, but these guys worked incredibly hard and they worked incredibly well together, with, of course, Brody King coming in and just manhandling Max to start, and Max trying to play mind games and whatnot. He was ready. He wasn't going to get suckered like last time. He was ready for this, and he even starts targeting Brody's knee when he sort of buckle bombs. He throws Brody into the turnbuckles, and Brody tweaks his knee. So that becomes then the centerpiece of MJF's strategy, where he goes after the knee. Great job selling by Brody. Oh, it wasn't a buckle bomb. It was a whiffed cannonball attempt, come to think of it. And they're doing, they're doing a lot of usual Brody spots, the crossbody into the barricades on the floor, and the hanging sleeper hold. There was this incredible spot where MJF dives and Brody catches him, and then Death Valley drivers him into the barricades like viciously, and in a way where Max actually falls on the concrete. And that was an incredible spot. And Max was extremely good here. Max, I found, again, just commands the ring. He's so good at what he does. Generates really good heat with the audience. I thought he was fantastic. Tries to use the Dynamite Diamond ring, but Bryce Remsburg is onto him. Max, here's a piece of advice. You gotta stop having Bryce Remsburg officiate your matches, because this is not the first time he tries to catch you with the diamond ring. He knows what's up. So Brody at some point hits the Gonzo bomb, and I'm like, holy shit! Like, he hits it proper, but MJF kicks out. A bit of an emphasis on he being probably the first person to ever kick out of it. MJF then slams Brody after they struggle on the apron. He sort of has him in a tombstone position, then slams him forward, rolls him back into the ring for the heat seeker, and that puts Brody King away. Despite Bandito being out on the floor, Bandito shows up at some point in the match where Brody is in the Salt of the Earth thing. I think it was the salt of the earth, or no, he was just in he was just in a sleeper hold. I remember the match. He was in a sleeper hold on the floor, and couldn't get out, and he was slowly passing out. So Bandito shows up, and he's like, "You told me before, don't give up. So now you can't give up," and that sort of energizes everyone. And Bandito sticks around for the rest of the match, but he doesn't really interfere. He doesn't do anything else other than this nice moment between partners, buddies, sticking up for each other, bringing, showing that they have this this connection. I still don't understand why people thought, why there suddenly was this discourse that Brody King was going to turn on Bandito, because I don't know. I still don't understand it. I think it's a good pairing, and they should continue doing that for a bit. That being said, a good main event, like a solid 3.5 star main event. I mean, nothing wrong with it. Good, very good, actually. I was thoroughly entertained. I thought everyone worked hard. I think the drama of Brody not standing a chance for a victory here sort of took a little bit away from the match, especially. But then again, like I talked on the preview, AEW is such in a mood these days to sort of subvert our expectations and to do things that we were not anticipating, that I was like, okay, well, maybe they will decide to do it. Maybe they will decide to pull the trigger on it. And after the match, Hangman Page shows up to go nose to nose with MJF, and he signs his World Championship contract for Revolution. And MJF flinches at a fake punch that Hangman was about to throw. He just completely faked them out, and so there you go. So MJF still might be a little worried about the Hangman. I'm sure we'll hear more about MJF and the Hangman this week on Wednesday Night Dynamite, and that's the show. A terrific show. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you just take the 2 hours and 30 so minutes to sit down and enjoy it. It's a good watch. It's a fun watch. AEW is so good, and if you can only watch one match, it has to be Kyle versus Mark Briscoe. Just an outstanding piece of business. So there you go. The Grand Slam Australia 2025 is a big old thumbs up from Mr. Warren Hayes.